What's up, guys? Welcome back to Inside Out Precision. Before we get into today's video, as usual, I want to remind you that we have the website up with all the merch. We got hats, we got hoodies, everything you might want. Father's Day is right around the corner. So if you got a dad who's into archery and you're looking for something for him, maybe get him some IOP merch. I don't know. But I want to talk about, I think, a pretty unknown thing about arrows today. And this is something that I actually had heard before, been asked questions on it, but I never actually confirmed it until just a couple weeks ago. And that is the straightness tolerances on arrows being the best in the middle 28 inches of the arrow. And what I mean by that is when you buy your arrows, they come in all different grades. Like a great example is like the Hunter series from Gold Tip. So you have the standard Gold Tip Hunters, the Gold Tip Hunter XTs, and then the Gold Tip Hunter Pros. The standard Hunters are 0.006 straightness, so 6,000 straightness. The XTs are 3,000 straightness, and the Pros are 1,000 straightness. Now, I get asked a lot, and I've heard this before, should I cut, when I cut my arrows, should I cut from the back and the front? Now, generally speaking, like at the shop, we always just cut from the front. The nocks always come in the arrows, so kind of in the interest of time, generally we always just cut from the front. But to my knowledge, every brand except Black Eagle, that straightness tolerance that they mark on the arrow, so like, this is my old carbon injection, it's supposed to be 1,000 straightness. That's only for the middle 28 inches of that shaft. So these come like 32.5 inches stock, uncut. The ends are not guaranteed to be in that same tolerance. So unless you're shooting a Black Eagle, which they say that tolerance is throughout the entire 32 inches of the shaft, it actually is a good idea to cut from the front and the back. And we have a little like straightness tester measure, I don't know exactly what it's called, at the shop. And I was actually rolling the arrows on different spots, and lo and behold, as I got closer to the end of the arrow, of like the blank shaft, that needle started moving a lot more. Those new Axis long range, they're match grade, so they're plus or minus 1,000th. But as I got out towards the end, they were more like 3 or 4 thousandths. Now, 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch, you have to be an incredible shooter to actually see that show up on a target. But if you're paying for, the straightness tolerance of a 1,000th shaft, it's nice to have as much of that shaft as you can get in that tolerance zone, basically. So let's say I have, I need an arrow that's 28-inch cut length. Rather than just cutting 4.5 inches off the front, what I would do is measure, the middle 28 inches of that arrow, mark it with a little Sharpie, and actually cut from the back and the front. And now, I've got the two most, the least amount of tolerance parts of the shaft out of the way. I've just got the straightest portion of that 28 inches in the middle of the shaft. Now, like I said, Easton, Gold Tip, Victory, to my knowledge, they all are that 28-inch guarantee. Black Eagle, on the other hand, guarantees that the entire 32 inches of the shaft is within the tolerance that's marked on the arrow. So if it's plus or minus, 1,000th, the entire 32 inches of that arrow shaft should be 1,000th straightness. Like these injections and those new long range, right in the middle of the shaft, that needle barely even moved. It was like 1/4 thousandth. When we had our PSE rep in, he actually brought some of the Black Eagle shafts, and I was very, very impressed with their arrows. We don't sell them at the shop, but I would recommend them to anybody. That needle literally did not move at all. It's like when you put, like an X27 or something on there, like an FMJ. They're just perfectly straight. So I was really impressed with that. And it's nice that, in that case, you could just cut from the front and that still the rest of the remainder of the shaft is within that 1,000 straightness. Now, when people ask me, how important is it, like a good example, again, going back to the Gold Tip, the Hunter series, the Pro Hunter and just the standard Hunter, grains per inch, diameter, all that is exactly the same. The Pros are just the shafts that are, the straightest, basically. So is it worth $160 for plus or minus 1,000th versus $78 for plus or minus 6,000ths. Honestly, like I said, I think you would have to be a professional caliber shooter, and you're not going to see that at like 10, 20, 30 yards. You know, maybe out at 80, 90, 100 yards, you might see a little bit different in group sizing. But I mean, we're talking 5,000ths of an inch. I mean, that's such a small variance. I really don't think that you're going to see a huge difference in terms of like group size and performance. That being said, it is nice to know that your equipment is basically perfect. When you can take out the possibility that it might be your equipment, then you know that any misses are just on your shoulders, and you know you're not guessing like, oh, you know, was that arrow just out of the 10 ring because of that 5,000ths, you know, less straightness basically. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I'm definitely going to start cutting my arrows from the front and the back now and try to get, you know, as much of just that middle portion of the shaft to complete the length of my arrow as I can. Like I said, I've been cutting arrows from the front for a long time, and I've shot phenomenal groups with them. I don't think it's that huge of a deal, but I also don't think a lot of people know that. Like, nobody advertises that. Black Eagle advertises a little bit that they do it throughout the entire length of the shaft, but you know, if I'm Easton or Gold Tip or Victory or whoever, I'm definitely not advertising that, you know, the last 2 or 3 inches on either end of the arrow is nowhere near the same tolerance as the middle 28. So I thought that was a kind of interesting thing, and just thought I would share because I know a lot of guys spend a lot of money on arrows, and you may as well, you know, be cutting them for both sides to get the most out of the money that you're spending basically. When you do that though, when you cut from both sides, it is imperative that you square the knock end and then obviously the tip end or the point end. Because with a knock, I mean, if that arrow's kind of janky in the back and that knock is sitting in there at just a 1/2 degree or 2 degree angle or something like that, you're gonna see issues with it. So if you cut from the back, you know, get yourself a little arrow square, take the time. It only takes 10 seconds per shaft, and just make sure you square up the back of that before reinserting the knock. Like I said, I just built up all those Axis Pro long range. They're shooting phenomenal, but I'm probably gonna build another dozen before TAC because I've already broke a couple of them, and from what I hear, you need a lot of arrows at TAC. So I'm probably gonna build another dozen like that. I'm gonna cut from the front and back. I doubt I'm gonna notice that big of a difference, but at least I know that I'm getting the best tolerance in that shaft. So just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Thought I'd share that. Stay tuned for next week's video. It's going to be either, well, it might be next week, might be the week after. I'm waiting on the strings for my EVL, but I'm going to actually do the entire EVL build. I know a lot of you are asking questions. A lot of you are getting that bow right now after being on order for 3 or 4 months, and you're curious on how to set that up. So I've been really impressed with that bow, and I'm going to do a full bow build. So stay tuned in the next couple weeks for that. I know I've been getting a lot of questions on it. I apologize that the first time I shot it, there was no audio. And I was going to tear it all apart and do it again, but rather than tear it apart, reset it back up, and then get new strings in a week, and then tear it apart again and reset it back up, I'm just going to wait till I get the strings and do it all at one time. So thanks for watching today, guys. I hope this is a little tip if you got a fresh dozen arrows sitting at home that aren't fletched yet. You know, before you cut them, measure out that whatever length you need from end to end and cut both sides and see if it makes any difference for you. So thanks for watching as usual. Thank you for all the support. Head on over to InsideOutPrecision.com. Get yourself some merch. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there and wives that have to put up with our crazy asses all the time. So as usual, guys, remember precision is a decision. Keep them in the middle, and I'll see you on the range.